Hey everybody, it's Ben again. This is episode number 12, I think, of the Pirates Collection Review series, and I'm going over the Cursed Crew. So they came out in Davy Jones' Curse. Hopefully you watched episode 11, the ship review of the Cursed, and we'll get right into it with Papa Doc, who is a possession crew for 8 points. Here you have to roll a 6 and give up your action to try to possess an enemy crew, so as you probably could tell, 1 in 6 chance for 8 points is not a good deal at all. This could have been maybe 4 points. There is a pirate code entry that talks about how you can, if you don't get the 6, you can use the action for something else, so that helps them a lot. But that being said, the possession ability is still really bad. I will say, as an add-on, Papa Doc had another 8-point variation in Return to Savage Shores, which was never physically produced, but it was designed. Wolf released the stats, and that version of Papa Doc is Canceller and +1 to boarding rolls for 8 points. So that's like infinitely better, and it gives the Cursed a much-needed crew Canceller, so they can try to keep pace with some of the best factions in the game. So if you want to use Papa Doc, I'd recommend the RTSS proxy instead. So, and here's the first version of El Phantasma, at least for the Curse. The Pirates got him in Spanish Main and Crimson Coast. This version is a little iffy. He's got decent abilities, but his cost is really high and prohibitive. Fear's not too great. Reverse Captain is okay, but usually gunships would much rather have a captain, and both of those abilities are overpriced. He does get World Hater, that last ability. That one is fantastic, but that's most of the value you're getting, and World Hater is usually 4 points, so you're basically paying a lot for that, and you're not getting much extra for those 5 extra points. So not the best version of him, but we'll see much better in a minute or two. Davy Jones, here's the original copier version. This one is pretty awesome, just like Behemoth, one of only 2 game pieces with the copy ability. This one is just incredible. The possibilities are endless. This could be a whole 10-minute video by itself. For example, 10 Master copying the defensive abilities of El Acorazado, or maybe Le Bonaparte, or the Pestilence, so you can only be hit by cannon rolls of a 6. Or you could do an offensive ability like HMS Endeavor, copy that, and then you could have, the 10 Master can eliminate up to 20 masts in a turn, for example, or 40 with extra actions. It gets crazy in a hurry. Copying Longship would be scary. Get 2 shots per mast. There's a lot of things. Even just something basically a Canceller would be a good idea too. So for 11 points, you're not going to use him in a 40-point game much, but he is pretty darn good in the big games, like 100 points plus campaign games. He's great on the 10 Masters. The Curse got 2, Delusion and Guichuan, and so yeah, he's pretty awesome. Sammy the Skull, there's 2 versions of him. This one I think is slightly better. This one's Captain and +1 to boarding rolls for 6 points. I'd prefer it for 5, but we've seen this elsewhere, so solid crew, especially with the Curse boarding based crew. And he links, I'll just go straight to his link. This is in number order, I think, but I'll just go straight to his link. He has a link to White Crew, and that's the Massacre ability. So that pairs really well with Sammy the Skull. It is really expensive, 13 points, but Captain +1 to boards, and then Massacre. I think Massacre could have been 5, +1 to boarding rolls is 2, realistically. So 10 points total would be a lot more reasonable, but I like using these 2 as a linked combo with a Helmsman on the Skin Flare, which is that Switchblade you saw in the previous episode. This one, this guy had a couple other versions. We'll see another one soon. He also started off as a pirate, like Phantasma. This one's not too good, though. This ability never strikes me as very good. I don't find opportunities to use it very often. It's best in like big battlefields of a huge game, like a campaign game, but in a 40-point game, this is just a waste of points. I don't know, I'd rather have it built into a ship than on a crew. I don't think I've ever purposely used this guy in a game outside of Command the Oceans when he was the commander. Tabitha McWarren has a nice ability here for the Cursed. The Free Ride ability, as Sylvaxry calls it, is definitely a pretty good one, but the Cursed especially benefit from it because they lack crew severely. As you've seen, there's no extra action crew for 5 points or same action twice crew for 3. Just for example, and they don't have a Canceller outside of the unreleased set. So this is a really good ability for them. It also gives them access to all sorts of stuff. So, and the Unblinking 99 is kind of infamous for being horrible. Fear is probably worth about 2 points in general, and 6 is just kind of insulting. So this is one of the worst named crew in the entire game. So White Crew, decent but really expensive. Sargasso Nightmare, this is one I like. Could be 3, I think, but it's I call it an L booster. So if you're with an L of a sea monster, not a sea creature, it has to be a squid or a serpent or a shark, not titans or dragons. But if you're with an L, you get plus L at base move. So I think this one is actually a little underrated. You can make some pretty cool and devastating squadrons with this Serpent's Fang, you know, fast creatures that are already fast, and then they get a boost. It's like, they just fly halfway across the board in one turn. So it's pretty impressive. Trogs, this one is basically the hoarding gold ability. It got turned into a keyword later on with Fitzgerald. Captain of Delusion. So Trogs looks scary, but this could be 4 points. I don't know. Hoard is solid, but if you put it on a crew, that crew takes up a card space, which means you're going to hoard 1 less coin. So that's what I always think about with the putting on a crew. It's just too bad. So, but yeah, it's better built into a ship, and getting gold doesn't really curse, you know, strength anyway. Edward Lowe is the same as Papa Doc. He's an 8-point possession crew, and he's got, I mean, this was a real pirate. He was one of the most brutal, notorious, and like cruel, not just pirates ever, but arguably one of the more cruel human beings in recorded history. So he's pretty awful. And I made a custom of him recently. And this is the other version of Davy Jones. This one is even more exciting than the copier version, in my opinion. Maybe a little not as diverse, but this one gives you an automatic extra action on a 1 through 4. So the all-powerful keyword is what it is. And then on a 5, any ship in your fleet. On a 6, any ship in play, any enemy ship, I should say. So really devastating. And you'll often be using the 5 for his ship as well. So basically 83% or whatever of the time, his ship, which is often 10 Master or the Divine Dragon or Flying Dutchman, something like that, is going to be moving and shooting twice in a turn. And the other, on the 6, he can cause a ton of chaos. So he's devastating. He's amazing to use. He can really turn a game. He can be the signature crew of games, like game after game after game. Like he's just going to dominate, and not that he'll always win, but he's always going to play a huge role in what happens, basically. El Phantasma, this is probably the best version of him, including the pirate versions. It's a basic sack captain, which the Curse could really use because they don't have a lot of good named crew. This is one of their best. Maybe you could make a solid case that he's purely the most brutally useful, even though Jones is more exciting in some cases. But yeah, sack captain for 5 is just great, just like Captain Blackheart from the original Spanish Main Days. I think this is Phantasma's one of his best artwork too. He's got the glowing eyes, which we'll see in a moment. But finishing off Ocean's Edge crew is Wraith, who's got Fear and Massacre for 9 points. So that makes me think they did Fear for 2, so that's good. But I don't know, Massacre, neither is a fantastic ability. And then when Massacre is at 7, that's just, I'd rather use White Crew and save the 2 points on the Fear. So Wraith doesn't really appeal to me too much. We're going to see a more, in my opinion, a better and more exciting version of him later. Here's El Phantasma again, 3rd and final cursed version. This one is actually really good too, not as good as OE, but for 2 points more, you get Eternal, you get Fear, and you get same action twice. And I think this is the only cursed crew that has same action twice. So that's really cool. The other version is better, but this one is pretty awesome as well. So, I don't know, the combos are kind of endless with the various versions of El Phantasma with the curse. So, definitely one to get multiple versions of, especially these 2 versions. The one from DJ Season is good, but if you're a curse player, well, if you're a curse player, I would say you want all 4 of these crew, pretty much, that are in the frame. Last of all, Hag of Tortuga. Same as Sargasso Nightmare, an L booster, but if you like using the curse, you're going to be using some sea creatures or sea monsters. So Hag of Tortuga is a good one to get a hold of. I will say, I think she's rare. Sargasso Nightmare is common, so probably easier to get the Nightmare, but either way. This is the other version of Devereaux. This one is not very good either, actually. The 3-point version was kind of meh. This one might be worse. And he's got the UT Horde ability, which I think is only worth maybe 2 or 3 points. So 5 is really, really pushing it and just bad. And he's even got a hostility in there too. He's hostile to pirates, and that didn't even knock his cost down. So that's probably one of the worst named crew, and probably one of the more forgotten about named crew, but for good reason. The other version of Sammy the Skull is Captain with Fear. So Fear, I don't think it's 3 points, but he does also have a link to all cursed ships, which is really cool. So that makes this version arguably as good, or in some cases, some people might think it's better than that version of Sammy the Skull. For a hybrid, I would agree, but I'd rather have +1 boards than Fear, and that's saying something because I don't like either ability all that much. Sir Edmund is a 2-point reducer, which almost never get used, but as I talked about in the ships video for the cursed, he's actually got a really perfect niche use for the Divine Dragon, because him with this version of Davy Jones, Captain Helmsman, comes to 19 points on the Divine Dragon, which is 16, but his -1 for the other 3 crew knock it down to 16. So that's a rare case of a reducer being useful. That's pretty much the only time I've used a reducer more than once. Any other cases are like really fringe random cases just to make a fleet work. But in that case, Sir Edmund's like my favorite reducer, I guess, just because of that one instance. But anyway, here's an L mover, Tabitha McWarren, the super rare version of her. Her eyes started glowing, evidently. Well, they kind of already glow there, and then here they really pop out. So she's an L mover, not an L booster. 6 points. This is a good gimmick for the cursed. It's best with reroll, which the cursed don't have much of. The Fiddler's green, but still, they've got, I don't know, a handful of cheap ships, like the Lizard Sting, for example, is 6 points. You could leave her at your home island and use the L mover. This is best in a bigger game. You wouldn't really want to get this out in a 40-point game for the most part. You could try it, but it's not going to be as good when you have more points to just throw around, like 100 points, or preferably a campaign game with, you know, thousands in play. And here's the other version of Wraith. So this one is interesting. Whenever any crew is eliminated, roll a d6 on a result of 6. Assign the crew to the ship. Nationality changes and becomes linked. So you can use their abilities. So you can, like, it's kind of like a better version of Possession, because it's half the cost, and you don't need to be with an S. It's just any crew, whenever any crew eliminated. It would make more sense if this was 8 and the other one was 4, but anyway, this one is far better, and it makes this version of Wraith far better than this version. Neither is all that practical, really. I've even used Wraith a handful of times, including a pretty solid usage of him in Vassal Campaign Game 1, but even if you accumulate a lot of crew, usually the ship will either just sink, or you'll get boarded, or I don't know. It doesn't really work all that well. It sounds cooler than it actually works, kind of like the sniping ability, I suppose. But it's still a decent named crew, I suppose. And once again, you want to use him in huge games as long as possible. Try to get as many 6s as possible. So in a smaller game, he's going to be mostly useless, I would think. But in a campaign game, you could at least accumulate, you know, a bunch of crew, and then hopefully use some of them, or at least be able to sacrifice them with the Loki's Revenge or Al Phantasma, which are combos I like using. Especially Loki's Revenge with Wraith has been used a few times now in various campaign games. Cavendish is just a clone of Tabitha McWarren's DJC version, but that means you could use both in the same game. So if you wanted to really go crazy in a big game, you could use both on, you know, maybe both 10 masters and pull in all sorts of crew to make the Guichfun and Delusion really kind of crazy. And finally, we have Master Scribe from Savage Shores. I talked about him in the ship video. He makes the Celestine even better because you can place 2 trade currents in a turn if you get lucky with both die rolls. So that's pretty cool. And between the Link and the Explorer as well, he makes the Celestine one of the Curse best gold runners too. So it's all good crew overall, and I would highly recommend using him on the Celestine almost exclusively because it's a perfect combo, almost too perfect. But yeah, he's a good crew actually for the Curse. So this is not quite all of them, as I've said before, and they have the Headhunter and Fitzgerald, and you'll see later some of the mega cards, but since they're not in my binders, I'm going over them later. But overall, the Curse didn't get quality or quantity with their named crew, which really limits them as a faction. But what they did get was kind of exciting at times. The versions of Davy Jones, Tabitha McWarren, El Phantasma, and a few random ones like Wraith and Sammy the Skull in some cases can be pretty interesting to use. So the cream of the crop is pretty fun, but after that it's pretty depressing and mediocre. So that's the Curse crew, and I'll see you again hopefully in the next episode where I get a look at the Barbary Corsairs. So thanks for watching.